One of my hopes with our Please Note videos is that I'd have an opportunity to introduce you to some of the interesting and incredible people I'm blessed and privileged to meet. Well, today I was having a meeting with two remarkable guys, two faithful priests of this church who are actually making a difference in charting a pathway for our church to go forward into God's future. And so I wanted them to introduce themselves to you, tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do, and then we may have a little bit of conversation while we're at it as we go.
My name is Bill Sachs, and I'm a priest based in Richmond, Virginia, but I'm a fellow of Seabury Western and Bexley Hall Seminaries in Chicago and Columbus, Ohio. And in that role, we're really looking at what does it mean to develop Christian vocation for the 21st century. Not just making priests, which seminaries do and should continue to do, but what does it mean to really live the life of faith, to be a faithful person in your work, in your school, in daily life? Crucial question. We see such a hunger for learning among people, and we're excited by the opportunity to help encourage people in this kind of path.
And I'm Roger Ferlo. I'm the new president of Bexley Hall and Seabury Western Seminaries, two of the oldest seminaries in the Episcopal Church, which have decided to not just merge, but to federate in a way that will create a new way of being seminary, so that we're actually about not just the making of priests, but the making of disciples, some of whom might be priests, some of them who are likely to be leaders of their own congregations, or leaders of the Christian faith and discipling in the workplace. I've been a priest for 26 years, and for 19 of those years I was a parish priest. And for the last 8 years, I went from being a parish priest to being a seminary professor at Virginia Seminary. And that has actually, for me, been the great inspiration to make something new out of two distinguished and sometimes struggling institutions in the Midwest.
We've had at least 3 of our seminarians do Anglican studies at either Bexley Hall or at Seabury Western Seminary, where Roger is the president of. And in the course of our conversation, we talked about looking for another word for seminary. People hear seminary and they just think priest. But I think you guys are working to redefine that word seminary. When we hear seminary, we hear vocation in the world. And you've been working on that with Diana Butler-Bass, who is familiar to many people here in North Carolina.
Yes, indeed. Diana Butler-Bass, also a fellow of Seabury and Bexley. We've been working on the question of, in this world we live in, where so many people say they have no religious affiliation, and so many people are put off by what they see as extremist kinds of religion, we believe firmly, and we know that it is possible to form people as believers, as disciples, who will carry that faith into the world in a way that they will care for other people. They will understand the kind of religious pluralism and diversity of our world today, and they can deal respectfully, caringly, in an informed way with difference. We really believe we can equip people to live faithfully as Christians in a world of difference. That's what's exciting to me. That's the world we face today, to inform, to educate. And the word may not be seminary. That's the word that's familiar to everyone. But seminary, if it is in a different sense, in a sense of really forming followers of Jesus Christ for the sake of loving and caring for the world.
In the course of our conversation, Roger was talking about reading Scripture and hearing Scripture. And I just want you to tell folk what you were telling me about that, the Cambridge reasoning.
Yeah, well, Scripture has been my passion as a teacher, both as a parish priest and preacher, but then over the last 8 years as teacher. My actual position was called Professor of Theology and Culture. But what I really focus on is how to read and the way in which Scripture has been read through the ages, but particularly the way Scripture is being read now and frequently misread now. My experience in years as a parish priest with Episcopalians is that many Episcopalians who are so accomplished in their own walks of life, their own professions, highly educated people, are at best ambivalent about reading Scripture, and at worst simply afraid to read Scripture because it might identify themselves as being one of those Christians for whom Scripture becomes a kind of a code book for rigid behaviors. Well, so one of the things that I've been involved with over the years is opening the Bible to Episcopalians who might otherwise feel themselves incompetent to read, And what we're doing now at Bexley Hall and at Seabury is to explore ways to enter into the world of scriptural reasoning, which is not just opening the Bible for Episcopalians or for Christians, but for taking the Christian Bible and people who are adept at reading the Christian Bible and putting them in the same room as people who are adept at reading the Torah as Jews and reading the Quran as Muslims, and to find common ground, not to sort of homogenize these three scriptural traditions, but for people to speak from their own tradition on issues that matter to all three of them, to all three traditions. For instance, issues of freedom of religion, or of the origins of humankind, or of the way in which ethical quandaries are negotiated because of our scriptural traditions. And what it turns out in the way this works is that there's tremendous opportunity for rich, sometimes challenging, but always formational conversations across religious lines. And since we're now entering a time in the religious life of America that is intensely pluralistic, particularly in many of our own urban settings, these are skills that are essential for real Christian discipleship, a discipleship that's open to all people in all walks of life across faith lines.
Roger, Bill, thank you for coming to Raleigh. And as I said, I have the privilege of meeting some incredible people, and you guys are among those incredible people, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
God bless you, and keep the faith.